Welcome back. Um, let's see. We left off only a handful of hours ago. We left off at our simple widgets for this UI query builder. So I'm just going to continue doing that, right? That was part 4. Now here's part 5. So it's still July 17th on a Sunday, a little bit later in the evening. Um, yeah, I'm just going to jump right into it. I've been thinking about it now for a couple of hours, and I think that I've got some ideas of directions that I want to take this, so I might just go ahead and kind of just, start doing that. So just a reminder of kind of where we're at. Let's see, like these are some of the queries that we were running before. Just things like that. That's what we got right now. So I think what I'm going to do is, instead of working on this UI stuff right now, is I'm going to just go ahead and build out some more events. Then once all of our events are built, then we can go ahead and just start, fixing the UI up and making it look a little bit nicer and easier to work with. So let's see. First things first, one thing that I want to change, and this is not really related to the events or UI, but there's a function in here, this move query widget to. Right now this just takes two indices. I want to change this so that it takes widget query request instead, right? And so these have instances of equals, and to get an index from a sequence, right, we just need a value that is part of that, just has an equals instance. So like we can look up these indices in this function. So I just think it would be easier and a little bit neater from the front end and in the handler if we didn't have to find these indices, right? Like we could just have this function figure these indices out for us. So I'm gonna go ahead and rewrite this one now. So not quite like anything event or handler related, right? But I think it'll be useful and helpful to have in the long run. So move query widget node to, right? And then this is going to take a widget query request. It's going to take two of those. I'm going to have the one that we're moving, and then the one that we're moving to, right, pretty much. Or rather, like this one is going to be moved to just in front of this one in the sequence. And then, we'll have to have probably a special case to handle just moving something to the back. Like if you have that sequence, like say I want to move this one actually to the back, we'll have to have some kind of special event probably to handle doing that. But we can do that when we get there. This is a request. This is actually not a request. This is a sentence branch. Let me think. Yeah, it's going to be like this. I usually like to just write my function signatures like that, even though it's really kind of a waste of time usually, especially with types this specific, right? I wouldn't have to specify those. Haskell would just know what those are, but whatever, I like to do it anyways. So, and then I think we can keep this pretty similar to how it used to be, right? So I'm gonna like not try to reinvent the wheel here, but I'm just gonna kind of keep it pretty close to what it was before. So we'll still probably do it with do notation, right? So let's see. We have this lookup. Like we don't need that anymore, right? We don't need that. We don't need this lookup. We do still need that delete at. So what we need to do is get an index for what we're trying to delete. And what we're doing there is we're just taking out that old one as we move it, right? First we delete it, and then we put it back in right? Because we don't have an actual function in the sequence module that'll just move an element, so we do have to delete it and then create a new one inside that sequence. So we need that. So let's see, we need to I think what we can just do is just do lm index L from sts. I don't know exactly what this is complaining about. Oh, this is from maybe. Okay. Let's see. So there's the index that this sentence branch resides in inside this sequence, if it does at all, right? So this is a maybe. After that, we can go ahead and then just delete that. So let's see. Alright, so before we were working with this sequence, and then, pretty much after running this function, then we have to start working with this one. And let's see, we've removed that, so now we need to push it back into the list. So we want to get the index of where this resides at, right? So we'll go ahead and do, we'll just call it do index. Like that. And then now what we need to do is then go ahead and insert this one before this index. So that just uses that insert at function. Like that. And there we go. There's our new function, and instead of just, integer indexes, it takes actual sentence branches, right? So then now from the front end, like what we could do is then have a draggable option that just takes a sentence branch, and then now on the front end what we could do is just drag them and then just have an event that just calls this function without having to, do any extra logic or anything like that. So that was one thing I was thinking about, and I think it would make things a little bit easier for us. Let's see, since I don't use that lookup anymore, I can get rid of this no implicit prelude thing, and then get rid of this. I was having to hide using lookup, or having to hide lookup from prelude before, because I'm using a unqualified sequence import. So I probably should just use it qualified, but it's not that big of a deal. Let's see. I'm going to commit these changes, and then we can start working on more events. Interface dot, what is this called? Handler. I guess I spell indices right. Could just call them indexes. Maybe that is not quite proper. Maybe that's one of those computer science things where they don't care that it's not technically proper English or something, I guess. Who cares, right? English isn't proper. I don't care about that. English is the best language on earth anyways, right? So So let's start thinking about some other events here. So we want to have an event that clears our sequence. Right, and that's kind of the analog for this button right now. So basically this button is just going to call a new event that just clears that sequence. And that'll be really easy to do. Shouldn't be a problem at all. I'm getting kind of all of my naming kind of all mixed up in here, but I'm not gonna go through in these videos and like change a bunch of names around and stuff. If I do, that'll be behind the scenes because it's just kind of boring to just like find and replace. You know, maybe a couple dozen names. Clear query sequence, and this will be easy. This. It's not even going to be an IO event. It's just going to be a model event, so it'll be super simple. Okay. So what we want to do when we clear that sequence is we both want to clear these elements from our model, and we also want to clear the file selection. And I think that those are the only two things really that we want to do. So those are both really easy to do with our model. First we'll clear the selection. I think we can just do that, right? Because it's a sequence, and sequence is also a monoid, so it has a mempty, which is super simple. Both of these are sequences actually, so we'll just call mempty on both of them. Makes things easy. Like so. Oh, it's not because it's a new type, right? I mean, we could we could make a quick instance for semigroup and monoid, so why not? You know, it might be useful to have, and we don't even need to make instances. I think that with generalized new type deriving, I think we can just do that. So let's try it and see if it lets us, right? So semigroup. Easy. So yeah, super simple. There we go. That's all we need. You love it when it works out like that. Instant. See, that's another way new types are super helpful, right? Because when you make an instance with a new type, you know, basically all you're doing is just unwrapping with your constructor and then just using an instance that type already has, right? So with this generalized new type deriving extension, it just does that for us, right? So we don't even have to manually write that instance. Which is cool. So yeah, we have our clear query sequence event done. So we can even go and then just add that to our widget now. We can just replace that event. So we'll find out where that button is. Here's our clear selection event, and what I will do real quick is to make sure I'm not missing anything. I'm going to go ahead and just make sure I'm not missing anything, right? Okay, so there are some other things that I'm missing. So we clear these tag occurrences, we clear this file selection info map, and then we reset the visibility of that widget. So I'm glad I double checked that because I totally would have forgot about those to reset those things. And let's see. I'll go ahead and just do this real quick. I'll try to explain what these are in a second. Okay, I think that does what we want it to. Okay, so to keep it brief, right? So we already know what these two things are doing. This tag occurrences lens, what this is on the front end is, so I can't actually show you here. So I'll just run tagger on the current version that I have installed. So those tag occurrences are. Let me find an appropriate picture real quick. There's some of my Valentine's ones. Oh! That might be the sauciest picture that I have, actually. I'm kind of not sure if I want to keep that one, to be honest. I like this one. Okay, right? I like this one a lot. So we'll have this one up while I talk about this. The picture being displayed is totally irrelevant to the actual contents of what I'm going to talk about, but so those tag occurrences are what these are, right? So the tag occurrences takes place on a tag occurrence map, which is not really super important what it is. It's basically just a new type wrapper that I made on the library backend for a hash map of some hashable value a and an int, right? So our hashable value is this descriptor, and then we have our int, and all this is telling us is in our current selection is how many times this tag appears, right? So for 603 images, we have the tag cute appearing 680 times. So I probably have, images with like 2 or 3 characters in them where they're all tagged as cute. So, that's why that's higher than that number. But I didn't mention this in my tutorial. That's because it's kind of just there just for like, info. But it's not it's not really helpful for anything. It's really not necessary at all, honestly, but it's kind of just there. So that's what that's what this tag occurrence is. And then this file selection info map is just an int map for file keys, right? Which is the primary key of each row for a file in the database. And then in that info map, it has this file info type, which all it has is a text and then a Boolean value. And all this is just aids in file renaming, right? So every one of these files in the selection, the file info map is just a way to retrieve one of these files from within the file. So it's really kind of convoluted to explain, and it's kind of a jank workaround. So it's not super important, but just for clarity, right? When you press edit, this text field that shows up is in a file info data type. So that's what this text is here. And then when you rename this and press enter, it sends an event with that text to the index of that int map that file info resides at, and sends an event to the database to rename that corresponding file. So it's a little bit of kind of like I don't know, a little jank, but whatever. So all we're doing is when we clear the selection, we want to make sure that we don't have any file infos there, because a file info and a file are represented as the same thing on the front end, visually in the UI, but they're not that way in the implementation. So we kind of want to make sure that they're cleared at the same time, right? So we don't just have kind of just like phantom files hanging around when we don't want them to. And then this file selection viz is just it's just a sum type that I created just to handle visibility of different widgets, right? So when you press this view button, excuse me, when you press this view button, it's changing that sum type to different constructors. So that's how that visibility is viewed. So that's all that's doing. So that's a quick overview of what this clear is doing. So now that we've sufficiently probably wasted enough time talking about that, we'll go ahead and just replace that current event with this new one. That means that we can go here. I don't think really that this is used anywhere else, but we'll double check. So let's see. Okay, so we have a hotkey for this, a global hotkey, so we want to change that as well. Gosh, this is so stupid. Just take me to the file, please. Hold on. That's our Control U hotkey. It needs to be just clear query sequence. Okay. Now we could probably just go ahead and then just get rid of this event entirely, since we don't use it anywhere else. One thing we can do, because Haskell language server kind of sucks, So one thing that we'll do is just do a quick, clean, and then rebuild everything just to make sure we're not missing anything. I like watching it build after you do a clean build. It's kind of fun. Okay, so we've got that. Let's go ahead and just to make sure that that event is working, we'll just rerun this and then try it out. Do that. How's that? We'll try clearing. Okay. Seems to work, right? There's still no files in there right now, but whatever. We can test that in a second. So we've got our clear query sequence. I'm going to go ahead and commit that. Even though I haven't added or removed any files, it never hurts to make sure. Okay. Commit. Did I ever commit this? Yeah, okay. Created an event to clear the query sequence. Moved the old clear selection event. Go ahead and commit that. Okay. Now, let's see. Next, for something I think would be helpful is we will make an event to actually run this sequence and query, right? That should be pretty simple to do as well. I already have this this function here to take our widget query request, squash it to a request, right? And then in our library we have a function that takes a request and then queries with it. So hopefully, assuming that I've gotten my ordering correctly, that I'm actually ordering things correctly when I append sequences, this should just work and do exactly the thing that the current implementation does. So, and that's going to be an IO event, but we already have an event to put new files to our model. So we don't, like before. Before we had to make this new put event, we already have one, right? Because there's already this query event that does an IO thing, so we only have to basically just make the query one to run it. So we'll make a new one. We'll call it, let's see. Run query sequence in our handler. Go there. Okay, and then now let's double check our query to make sure also, just cover our bases and make sure we're doing everything correctly. So all this query is doing is calling exactly what it was before, right? It's calling this put files. We're gonna have to change that put files a little bit for our run query, because the idea behind this new widget, right, is that now this query over here is going to be, declaratively the same thing as this selection. So what should happen when you run a query actually is that it clears this selection and then reruns the query and then puts the selection there. What happens now when you do this is you run the query and that query will return a set of files, and then you combine that set of files with the files you currently have using this setup. But the way that this new logic is going to work is that we don't need this setup anymore, right? So it should really always union, because whenever you run the query sequence, you're going to always have an empty set because it's going to be cleared before the query is run. So we're going to have to change that a little bit, and we don't want to actually literally clear the widget. My bad. Clear the widget before the query runs, because then it's gonna cause a lot of kind of unnecessary UI rendering, like updates, right? So we want to do that both in one step, so that we don't have to have the UI re-render twice and do some extra things that, you know, logically are involved with that. So we'll have to think about how we want to do that. But for now, we can do it the naive way, right? Because query is its own event, and then putting the files is its own event. So we can kind of have those two things be a little bit separated, and then think about how we want to implement that. Okay, so let's see. First, what we're going to need is a task, and this is just going to be put files, or rather do file selection event. Put files. And then this, I'm going to go to our library so I can remember what the name of the function is. This guy. Takes a connection, takes our request, which we have to retrieve from our model. So this is going to be squash, right? Okay. There's our naive case right there, right? So right now we don't have a corresponding element in the UI. To keep it simple, I'm gonna not do anything major. I'm just gonna add a quick hotkey to our text field to do this, so that we can test it out. One thing I will do actually before I do that is check in on this put files. I have two different events that handle putting files in the selection. We have this put files, and then we also saw that we had one, if you're paying attention, there was one that was coming up in IntelliSense that was called put files no combine. It's down here. So the put files actually takes care of doing this setup, and then it passes that new set to that put files no combine event. So probably what we actually want to do is, instead of put files here, is we want to call that put files no combine, right? Because we're not we're not combining files, we are just putting them. So it's still not quite that simple. I know we're still gonna have to make some changes to this. But the put files no combine, I'm pretty sure does actually exactly what we want it to do for most cases. So let's try to make sense of what is going on. Right, so I have this really kind of crazy view pattern here, and this is this is all just a view pattern. This is before even the actual body of the function is written. But all this is doing is that when you run a query, here's what I'm going to do for this one, right? Okay, so I'm going to query for UI, but then I'm also going to avoid any queries that I might be embarrassed by. So how's that? Better than nothing. We still got some cute Valentine's ones in there. Yeah, not too bad, right? Okay. So we'll find an example here. Okay, so so right now when you run a query, and I'm explaining what this view pattern is for, right? So it's what we have here is we get the current focused file. We break the sequence on where that sequence has a item that is equal to the focused file, and that creates this tuple here, and then we're just recombining that tuple. Right, so what we're doing here basically is just if when we get a new selection of files to put into the model, if the file that is currently focused exists in the new selection, then we want to keep that one on top so that it's currently in view, right? And then if it doesn't exist, we just go to whatever the first file is in the selection. So it's just a way to keep your sequence from starting over from the beginning whenever you run a query while you're looking at an image. So it looks a little bit more intimidating than it is, but it serves a pretty simple purpose, right? So like an example of this is we're looking at this picture of Yui sleeping right now, and she's in a pink sweater. So say that I just want to maybe intersect all images that have the descriptor sweater. Just run that, right? And so we see that the result set got substantially cut down, but we're still looking at the same image, right? Because she's in a sweater in this one. So then if we query for something that does not exist on this tag but is in the selection, right? So let's go ahead and intersect on this formal descriptor. What we should see is that this picture goes away, right? And I'll make that kind of a strict one just on the descriptor. So this image should change, right? And it did, because that image wasn't tagged with formal, but this one is, so it's in the new selection, right? So that's all that view pattern is for. That's all that's doing. So it looks kind of more intimidating. I should probably change that, because I get intimidated and I kind of forgot for like half a second what I was looking at when we got here. Let me see how we're doing on time. Not too bad. I'm trying to think. Let's see where we're at. So we put file no combine. We want to we're gonna have to change this. I don't want to think about changing that right now, but the good news when we change that is that I'm pretty sure we'll be able to get rid of this view pattern, right? So I won't have to go back and look at that anymore. But we'll go ahead and just do this. We'll go ahead, put files no combine. And this is expecting a sequence of files, so we'll just go ahead and then just convert this to a sequence. So we'll have to call from list to list on it, which is kind of a pain. I'm trying to think if that makes sense to me to do. I think so. So we'll just go ahead and do that. Sequence from list, right? And then this is going to be hash set to list, or maybe it's foldable to list. We'll try foldable, because foldable has to list, yeah. So hash set has an instance of foldable, and then foldable has a to list method, so we can just use that. Okay. Now let's go ahead and we'll just have a quick keybind on our text field that we can test this out with. It's a query text field. Just put a new one on here. I think this will work. We can try that. In the previous video, I said I wasn't surprised when it worked. I'm gonna be not super surprised when this works, but I'm going to be not surprised if something goes wrong also. So we'll find out. It's obviously, if we try to run two queries at the same time, we're obviously going to get kind of a weird result. But, or maybe not. Maybe it'll do what we want it to. You know, I don't know. Let's find out, right? So we'll just do something simple. We will do, and I'm going to try to avoid some more embarrassment, right? Like this. I might as well, mask off. I don't care. I've had a couple drinks, if you can't tell, so don't mind me. Nah, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Let's do cute, right? So nothing runs, right? And then now, if we do Shift Enter, hopefully what we should see is those 446 images show up. Bam! That's cool, right? That works. Now, if we clear this, hopefully we should see these go away, right? If we do Shift Enter, nothing should happen. I wonder if there's no error message, right? It doesn't really make sense that there would be, but let's see. I wonder what would happen. So we have this picture with Mio saluting in it. So let's go ahead and just search for salutes. Let's include Mio in this, and then next query we'll see what happens when we don't, right? So we can see we've got 12 images with salutes. So let's run this, and we've got Mio in there, which is what we expect, right? Got a nice Yui, you know, winking at you. Cute. Perfect. Let's clear this. And then what we should do is we can do cute. Let's try this. This is going into untested territory, right? Salute. And then if we run this, we should get those. We should get these same 12 files, I believe, or 8. Was there 8 before? I think so. It looks right to me, so I think that that's probably a success. Was that cute always 446? I think it was. I want to make sure that that number is not different. I think that looks fine to me, right? So let's go ahead and first of all have a little bit of beer. I'm just now kind of thinking that the prospects of complexity for this UI event could just be ever increasing. And I was thinking this afternoon about some ways that we could incorporate like interactive grouping and stuff, which I don't think would be too difficult. That might turn into kind of a stretch goal with this, where you can kind of retroactively group query terms and stuff. But for now, I'm very satisfied with how it is, right? It seems to work kind of exactly how we would expect it to, which is super cool. It at least works very well for kind of these simple sequences of simple queries, right? So one thing that I want to do, that I want to add real quick, that'll be very simple and helpful for us, is earlier a off-camera change I made was to create this function that'll just take a widget sentence branch and then just tell you what set operator it has. And that was mainly so that I could use it in the widget. So I'm just going to put that in the label real quick so we can look at that. I have to kind of do the arduous task of trying to figure out where this widget was again real quick. It's actually down here somewhere. It's in the focused file Figlet section. It's in our query widget here, right? Here's going to be our setup. Right, and this label is just purely for, it's just a temporary measure. I know it looks pretty bad. What is this function called? This is a widget sentence branch setup. Gotta call pack on that, because that's not text. There we go. Okay, let's try running this. and maybe this will help clarify some things for us as we debug this. There we go. So now we can see we've got our set operator, we've got our union cute, right? And then we can change this to intersect and then just find salute. We've got our intersect salute. And then let's go ahead and then we'll just union. I'd want to be able to see these tags, so I'm just going to add those. And then let's go ahead and run this query. Yeah, see, this is really coming along now. Let's go ahead and also just add a difference of, let's see, who do we not want to see? Let's not see Mio in these. Right, so we've got, there's 138 Mio images in the database. We've only got 8 in here, so I don't know. It might be kind of a tall order to try to tailor these numbers to the current selection, so I think that I might just probably not not ever bother with that, honestly. But let's try. So we have files in the selection right now, so let's just try running this query and then seeing what happens, because I'm not entirely sure what will happen, right? 5 images, so it kind of looks to me like it did what we wanted it to. I think it worked. Let's go ahead and we will just go ahead and difference any idle master character. Right. I think that worked, right? So yeah, this is really coming along. I think I'm going to stop this video here. After this, basically, what we're going to do is maybe take a look at that put files no combine event and just make sure that that is kind of, you know, doing what I want it to. I'm going to clean up some of those other events, right? So like that put files event we don't need anymore. I'm thinking now I would like to change how some of these set ops work. I would like to be able to like actually type the setup literal in here instead of having to rely on this widget, so I'm going to have to consider how to do that with this implementation. I have to spend a little bit of time thinking about how I would want to do that, if at all. That can wait down the road too. That doesn't have to be a right now sort of thing, so that might be another stretch goal, just to be able to do that. And then let's see, after checking out that put files no combine event, then I want to create an event for removing individual ones of these and moving them around. And then kind of as part of making those events, we are going to have to start tidying these widgets up to make them be a little bit more interactable. So yeah, we'll do that next time. So thanks for watching.